So, yeah, thanks again. You guys are our first interview for our podcast.
Yeah, we're
Oh,
excited.
how fun is that?
Awesome.
I know. So making history here. We just barely started a couple months ago. So, and we really enjoyed doing it.
I was listening to some this morning. I was cracking up at the guy who wanted to know how to take care of his long distance girlfriends when she had period issues.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, we enjoy doing those, the mini banters and then our debates and everything.
Yeah.
We really wanted to start doing interviews, so
yeah,
that's fun. Well, the mini banters are a lot of fun.
Well, thanks. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you guys also have a podcast, right? And you have the book, which we started reading.
We did.
And then your website.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah, the podcast, I've been doing the podcast for 8.5 years now. She's been my co-host the last year and a half, almost 2.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And before that was 2 other different ladies that are both in the field with sexuality and written on it, coach, teach on it. So we had 2 professional viewpoints for the first 6.5 years of the show. And then when she came on board, she's the straight lady of keeping me out of the clouds and the theory and making it applicable. And we try to just help people have better married sex. That's the whole goal.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. we kind of got that from your website, and we didn't finish your book, but we enjoyed it a lot, and we kind of took it by chapters instead of from beginning to end.
Sure.
So we kind of like picked and chose what we wanted to talk about.
That's a lot of people read books that way. I understand that completely. It's like, hey, I want the information I want, and then I'm going to move on. So
right.
Perfect.
So you're a marriage counselor by profession?
Yes.
Right. And what do you do?
I'm a CPA. I do taxes.
Oh, fun. So you were busy, or you are busy right now?
Yes. Yeah. We're kind of slammed. So it's all good. Now we're just taking care of all of our poor small business clients that are shut down because of all this, or life is changing. And anyway, it's good.
Yeah, it's a strange time in history, for sure.
Yep. It is. It really is. But hopefully people are making the best of it, and hopefully stuff like this helps people while they're stuck at home or whatever the case may be.
For sure.
And sorry, what was your name?
Pam.
Pam. Okay. Pam. Okay. Sorry about that.
And it's Justin and Sarah, right?
Yes.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Do you want to take it away with the questions? If you don't mind, if we just jump into that.
Yeah. How can we help you the most? I mean, that's the one thing. Anytime I'm on other shows, I want to make sure we help your audience the most, because that's the point to me. Is
right.
Well, yeah, maybe
I want to always be helpful.
Yeah, maybe a little. I don't know if I told you kind of our background. I think we kind of did an email. How Sarah and I almost got divorced last year, and we went through some pretty hard times. And it was mainly for me. I just thought, we're too different. We're not really meant to be together. And obviously we found out, or I specifically found out, that was really wrong. And we got back together, and we realized our differences were our strengths, and that's kind of where we came up with the idea for a podcast, to show that, you can have these different opinions.
Yeah.
And we have very different, even like religiously and politically, and, some of the really big things that couples struggle with. So.
Yeah, we make it work.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
Love that.
Good.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
So.
Yeah. So we'll go wherever you want to go.
Okay. And how much time do we have you guys for? So we don't.
That's a you call. I got a client at 2.
I blocked an hour. So you can tell us. Right.
Let's go till 2.
Let's go right up until you need to leave.
Oh, is that right? Wow, that's a long interview. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
No.
However long we need to go.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Great. Okay. So we just kind of want to start out with, we have some questions here for you, but the first one was just that we feel like now in our world that we live in, it's such a popular belief where people ask themselves, like, why should I get married? Like, I don't need a piece of paper to define my relationship. So we just were wondering what your take is on marriage and what the benefits are compared to just moving in with someone. So what are your like thoughts and feelings on that?
Or the tax benefits of getting married.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
there's both, right? I mean, there's two different sides of this. There's a value and a moral base of why we decide what we do as people, but then there's also marriage as an institution. I mean, that's, if you go throughout history, people used to get married for status, for security, for name, for culture, for necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go way back, even with the agricultural world, you got married and had children because you needed the workers in the fields, in the crops, and everything to survive. Now we marry for love, and that's a relatively new concept, which has made it to where there's a lot more of a difference on why not just cohabitate. But
Right.
there's still the legal side of things that come into play. I mean, our state has a common law component to it that if you just live with each other long enough, you're married, according to the state. Legally speaking, you don't have the paper, but with everything else. But I think of it in terms of, to me, we are very pro marriage with the show we do.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming up on 27 years next month at the time of this recording. And I see it as, marriage to me is there's a purpose to it. And I think marriage helps us be better because, as you guys do on your show where you talk about the differences and compatibilities, I think the differences that happen between a husband and a wife are designed to help us be better, to help us grow up. They're great mirrors of ourselves, that they challenge us to examine, how am I getting in my own way, rather than what's wrong with them. That there's also the possibility there's something wrong with me, if not a definite likelihood there's something wrong with me in how this is unfolding. And so I think it's interchangeable depending on the audience of committed relationship or marriage, but I think marriage has a different value structure to it because of that commitment. Whereas if you're just cohabitating, there's an element of, I can always have one foot out the door and I don't have to be as in, and maybe it makes it a little easier. But I think the longer you're in a relationship, the more you realize there's deeper things going on than just our happiness. There's also the development of us as people, and how we evolve to be better.
Right. And Corey and I come from the same, very similar faith backgrounds as well. So, I think that in any kind of culture, your faith background has a lot to do with how you look at relationships that you get into. But for me, one is my faith. I think that's what we're called to do. I'm not called to cohabitate.
Mm-hmm.
There is, a God ordained just a union here that I think makes it more special. But for me too, it is that commitment. Yeah, I want to say in front of people, in front of a minister, that I'm yours and I'm yours forever.
That's the idea of a covenant.
The covenant that's there within an actual marriage, as opposed to just deciding to go cohabitate. I think that commitment says a lot from me to Corey and from Corey to me, to make that just an even stronger bond. That's kind of my opinion on it anyway.
That's good.
Yeah, I love that. I think, what you said was, standing in front of a minister and just saying those words, or wherever you're getting married and whoever's marrying you, saying those words to each other that you are choosing each other for life, I think is huge. And I think a lot of people that, just cohabitate obviously miss out on that deep level of commitment. So
I think we learn a lot when you're into a marriage and it's deeper and longer.
Yes.
I think you start learning there's a whole lot more going on that's happening than in the early stages of a relationship, or in serial relationships, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, Sarah and I we've even talked about it before, where, before we got married, we weren't we weren't legitimately living together, but we basically lived together, you know.
Sure.
And when we got married, we're like, oh, it's gonna be basically the same thing,
Mhm.
you know, like.
Was it?
Like,
Was it though?
no, like it was,
Exactly.
our first year was
It
a
was hard.
huge shock, you know. And I think a lot of people, it's strange because we really were living together, but once you get married, it's all of a sudden it's just something's different,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
Something's definitely different, and it's not just a piece of paper. Like I feel like a lot of my friends have said that, you know, like why I don't need a piece of paper to show this person that I love them, you know. And it's just a lot more than that. So,
It
Mm-hmm.
is.
and I think it also has a benefit, especially when you have children as well, you know, to have, you know, the mom and the dad and have them, you know, be married, obviously. And you guys have kids, right?
Yes, we have 2.
Mhm.
Okay, so do we. So ours are
Nice.
probably a little younger.
Yeah, ours are teenagers now. So
Oh.
We waited 12 years to have kids.
Oh,
So
really?
Oh, wow.
most of our college buddies have grandkids now, and we still have a middle schooler
Oh,
and a high
wow.
schooler.
Yeah, we had kids very early on.
Yeah. Yep.
But this is a little off topic. What we were just kind of not debating, but talking about what has been the hardest stage for you with kids, like age wise. Do you remember?
Right now we have
each
a
stage has its.
4-year-old.
Yeah, yours. I'm sorry.
So right now we have a 4-year-old who is just pushing our buttons.
Yeah, each stage has its own challenges.
Uh,
That and its own blessings. There is an element of the older they get, the more fun it is, just because there's a lot more collaborative and engagement and hanging out. But I think of it from a developmental standpoint that the fog of a newborn has a definite challenge, just
Mhm.
because you can't leave the house. It's kind of like quarantine. You can't leave the house,
right.
That's
and
true.
you don't know what day it is.
Yeah, good preparation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything's an upheaval. The 2 to 4 or 5-year-old range, where they're really testing their boundaries and starting to become an independent person,
Yeah,
has its
that's
own
That one was
beast.
mine. That toddler stage was my hardest part because working all day, and then Corey's flexible, so he had the kids a few days a week, but then the other days they were at the sitter. And by the time I pick them up from work, I'm whipped. They're so tired and wiped out from being at the sitters all day. And so often the kids were grumpy on the drive home. By the time I got home, I was just about to pull my hair out because they're grumpy in the car. I've been dealing with traffic, and oh my gosh, I think that toddler time for me was the hardest
yeah.
because they still
That's
need you so much.
Mhm.
They're not
But they want to
bathing
be
themselves
independent.
yet. Yes,
right.
yes, but they can't be yet.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Well, Sarah's a teacher, and so, you know, she teaches 3rd grade. and,
So you're
and then
around it all day.
I am. I'm around. Yep. All the kids trying to push my buttons. I come home
Yeah.
and they're still pushing my buttons.
and I'm pushing her buttons, so it's just,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, but then the
Anyway.
teenage world has its own little angst with it too. When our oldest is a girl, and so when the first boy entered the world, that creates a whole different angst for me.
Mhm.
Of, okay, that's one of my kind I got to deal with now in relation to my daughter. All right, so there's just all of it has the challenges, but man, all of it definitely has the blessings
Oh, for sure.
Right.
the sparks that come along with it. So it's just kind of recognizing same kind of thing we do with the marriage, that parenting is one of those things I think helps us grow up too. It helps us be better,
Yeah.
handle ourselves better as they evolve and go through each of the stages.
Yeah.
I
For
think
sure.
you also learn a lot about yourself too.
Totally.
Obviously through marriage
Yeah.
and through having kids, you learn a lot about who you truly are.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
And
patience.
hopefully we're looking at it that way, right? Trying to become better and have that perspective. Okay, what am I learning about myself, and how do I need to change?
yes.
What about that situation was me?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's such a hard thing, like for people to reflect on themselves, because it's not pretty to like sit and think of like, hey, what did I do wrong in this situation? How can I be better? I mean, I still struggle with that, obviously.
Well, yeah, you also have
It's
to
hard.
humbly, like in this toddler stage. I mean, just this morning, I got so mad at our little 4-year-old, and I had to humble myself, and I went and apologized to him. I was like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and it's hard humbling yourself before a 4-year-old. It's like, because you feel like above them, obviously, in a way, and it's this strange little dynamic.
Yeah,
but you're like what
the
I did was
hierarchy
wrong.
matters. Yep.
Yeah, you're like, I should not have gotten that mad. I shouldn't have yelled, and so it's anyway. This 4 years old has been by far my hardest stage. But I was curious because a lot of people say teenage years, and anyways, sorry, that was a little off topic, but
it all fits, because if you think about it, I mean, we believe relationships are designed to help us be better and grow up. If I'll look at it
right.
What's it teaching me about me? Because it's not just what's my impact on other people. It's also what's this impact on me, and how am I handling what's in my circle on this side of the dynamic as best I can,
right,
to make the best relationships I can in every instance.
Yeah, you learn a lot from all of it, for sure.
Yep.
So then, just going from your book, we want to start from chapter 7, and it's titled "A Fight-Free Marriage is a Healthy Marriage." And you said marriage magnifies the differences between men and women, not just gender issues, though it magnifies our faults, our everythings. What would you both say are ways that married couples and others in relationships can learn to enjoy their differences?
So I want to point out on that the titles of his chapters in his book are myths.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
No, I knew that. Yeah.
Right. So for the listeners, I want them to realize that we're not saying a fight-free marriage is a healthy marriage.
Right.
Well,
total myth.
That's funny, because Sarah and I were driving back from St. George, and she's like, "Yeah, I just bought his book," and she read to me one of the what chapter was it?
I can't remember.
She read to me a chapter, and I didn't know they were myths, and I was like, what does this guy believe?
Right.
What's wrong with this dude?
I was like, that's an interesting spin, I'm not judgmental, but
right.
But yeah, that is thank you. That's an important point to bring up.
Right.
No, I think so. I mean, what you guys do on your show is trying to just talk about I've heard the definition just recently of intimacy. There's a component of it, or a facet of it, is intimacy is allowing room for differences. Because there's this element of how can we both be known as well as knowing each other. And that's gonna create fights. That's gonna create conflict, because not only is there a male-female difference in our wiring, because I mean, if you just look at it biologically speaking, what they've discovered about the brain in the last decade is a woman has more going on between the two hemispheres of her brain as far as what passes back and forth between the two hemispheres than men do, in general terms. And that's not anything about intelligence. That's just accessibility of the wiring. And so this is also what allows men to be literally, when a wife could be, "What are you doing?" And I could say nothing. And that's literally what I'm doing. But with her, I say, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, I'm caught up in this and that." And she's got this whole thread going of what she's thinking about. There's just a difference between that, because it doesn't compute to me on how can you not just relax and do nothing. And so that kind of stuff is going to create tension between us. And so how do I start to see that those differences are going to be there? One, biologically speaking, but then two, family of origin speaking. The way she was raised, even though we have a lot of overlap on the way our family values were growing up, there's nuances in there. We still have our biggest issue coming into marriage was I was modeled a mom that went to bed early to go read, and a father that stayed up late to grade papers because he's a professor in a college. And so I hung out with him. I was a late night guy too. And she was modeled, when one of the parents had something to do late, the other waited up. And so the first year and a half of our married life was a fight over when's bedtime.
That's happened to us too.
Right. So there's no morality on that of which one's right or wrong. Although, me going to bed when I want is really the right one. But it's seeing it as there's that tension of just like what she saw, what I saw, they're just different. And that's gonna create a problem on, okay, what's comfortable for me won't be comfortable for her. And most of what we fight about in married life, I think of it in terms of, if it's not a moral issue where there's a true right and wrong value structure to it, then what you fight about is what brings you relief and comfort. And I'm more comfortable doing life this way. She's more comfortable doing life that way. We're going to have disagreements over that. And that's just the reality of two different people trying to be two different people.
Yeah.
So how do you get to that point in your marriage where you are okay with like accepting those differences? Because I feel like so many people, I mean, we still too get so hung up on like these small little differences, and it's hard to get over. And how do you see that conflict can be like a good, healthy thing?
I think the biggest thing is you recognize it's not ever going to go away. So in one way, you start thinking of it as, okay, and this goes back to what we started the conversation about. What's this teaching about me? Why is my comfort and relief of anxiety so paramount? Why do I need them to help me feel better about me and doing it a certain way? And then you add to it the layer of, because in our experience, I'll just use it from us, in our experience on the major things of life, we really are in lockstep. Like we agree on a lot of the things, particularly parenting, like the way we want to parent our kids, the overarching values we're trying to instill to them, we agree on. How we instill them though, because we have a boy and a girl, is different.
Right.
There's nuances within it that I interact. I mean, we still had a fight once when our kid was a toddler. Our son, our house has a perfect, right here beside where we're sitting, this perfect long straightaway that you can throw a ball, which is great when you have a little kid. I can't do it now that he's 12, 13. It's too far of how far he can throw. Things will get broken.
Yeah.
But we would throw stuff, and she made a comment of, maybe we shouldn't throw things in the house. And I'm like, yeah, I think we will when I'm here. I want to do this because it's fun. And yeah, but what if something breaks? Well, then I'll fix it. But that doesn't mean we disagree about parenting. It just means about that little nuance. And a lot of times, like you're describing, Sarah, we can hear these things as, if we're not in lockstep on these little things, then all bets are off. We don't agree on anything. When in reality, that's just an overreaction. We do agree on a lot of things, or you wouldn't be together.
Yeah. Some of what brought me to the realization of our differences and how to deal with it better, and it was probably 12 years in or more before I really figured it out, was just realizing the meanings that each of us put behind things. And again, this is for me learning from Corey along the way with his doctorate work, and I'm reading his dissertation, I'm reading as he's writing his book, and I'm asking questions, and I'm like, dumb it down for me because I don't get this.
She was my original editor on everything. She was my first proofreader.
Right. So dumb it down. So I felt like I went through a doctoral program with him. But realizing that I would get mad about something that he would do, but it was because of the meaning that I put behind it, whatever the issue was. And he had a totally different meaning for that thing. Mm-hmm. And so when I finally understood that the things that I got upset about or the things that he got upset about weren't one of us trying to attack one another, it was, that has a totally different meaning to me than it does to him. And he probably has no idea where that meaning is, that he has no idea what meaning that I've got on it. And he doesn't know where that meaning is coming from. He has no idea that when I was a kid, XYZ happened to me. Right. And that's maybe triggering something from back then. Or maybe it was an issue that he and I had early on in marriage. Now it's gone. But when this happens, it makes me think, oh my gosh, is that coming back again? Mm-hmm. So when I got the courage to really realize what is the meaning I'm putting on behind this, and be able to explain that to him without blowing up, to just sit down and say, or go on a walk when we're not eyeball to eyeball and say, okay, here's what that meant to me. Here's where I was coming from. Maybe if I got upset about something and didn't react well, what did that mean to you? Because here's what it meant to me, and it was kind of a big deal to me, and I don't think it was a big deal to you.
I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that's one of the major things in our relationship and couples. You know, it's hard to realize how important something is to someone else when it's not a big deal to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
With the throwing the ball thing, or with us just last week, I was on my phone at her parents' house, and I was working on stuff with our website, and Sarah, she was like, "You've been on your phone a lot," and to me at the time I didn't realize that meant like, get off your phone and come over and be with my family, and we had an argument about it, and I just it's hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And then I feel like when you finally do like humble yourself and get to that point, you're like, oh, I get it. Like I get it now why you were upset. And I feel like when your spouse sees that you actually get it and you're not just like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, like let's stop fighting. I feel like that's when it gets resolved.
And you grow
hopefully.
closer, you feel validated, both of you finally understand where you're coming from and you're heard. And I think that's hard to figure out how to do in any relationship. It's hard to figure out how to do.
And I think when you can look at it through the lens of meanings, you start recognizing the goal is something bigger than us, because also what we're facing is something bigger than us. That some of the stuff, John Gottman's work, who's been studying couples for 40 plus years now, has found that 2/3 of the problems you face in marriage are unresolvable, which just means you're not going to see eye to eye on them. You'll be close on a lot of them, and on the major value ones, likely they're not in that 2/3 category. But the other ones, they're just differences between us. And how do I start to recognize that as long as our meanings are in line on the big things, the meanings not being as in line on the others isn't that big a deal. It's that idea of, okay, I see this and I don't care about it as much as you do. That does not mean I don't care about you. And there's a huge maturing step in that, of seeing it as, yes, I can listen to you vent about tax season. Being in my own world right now. I don't care about what you're venting about. I care about you, though. And there's a difference between that. And if I get to a point of like, I am not enough tax talk, I got to be able to say that and her not hear that meaning as, you don't even care about what I'm saying, and that's where we get off. We're on our worst sometimes when that's happening, rather than seeing it as, whoa, hold on. I can lump up almost all of my couples. The main problem we have is we overreact to our partner's overreactions.
Yeah, for sure.
We're off to the races from that. And so it's recognizing, how do I see this as, I'm not trying to control her reaction. I'm just trying to handle mine better. And if I overreacted, this is like you're talking about, I come back and I humble myself and say, you know what? You're right. I was wrong on that. And I'm so sorry that was the message that was being sent. And then it's done. And then you kind of re-engage and you keep moving. And that's life on life terms, because we don't ever get what's depicted in Hollywood and Hallmark. We get glimpses, but that's not reality. So it's how do you see this? Is there something deeper going on? How do I align in my relationship better, rather than see it as it's something wrong with my relationship?
Right. I think in your book you did mention like making sure you're not mirroring your partner's reactions, which I feel like is hard to do, at least for me. Like if Justin is sad, then like I get sad, and he's brought that up to me where he's like, I need you to like lift me up, and I'm like, oh, you're right, I'm just really bad at that. I need to he's sad, so then I get sad, or like he's really good at doing that for me, but like I struggle for doing that. And so I just think or like he's angry, so then it makes me angry, and that's been an issue for me.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the good cop, bad cop. Like one of you needs to, play the opposing side.
Yeah, isn't it so fascinating though that we go into a relationship thinking that if I don't feel what you feel, that I'm cold and I'm uncaring. We don't ever speak it this way. I mean, it's not part of our vows, right? That maybe that'd be better if, like, I promise to hold on to myself better. And even if I don't feel what you feel, I still love you and hope I can demonstrate that. Maybe that's a good vow statement to put in there.
Yeah.
We get into this one brain mindset thinking we will be in lockstep, and that if I don't join you in your whatever, I'm therefore not loving, rather than maybe I need to be in a position that I am handling things better so that you can grieve and deal with what needs to be dealt with and be angry about something. Fine. But if we both get angry, then who's taking care of a kid? Who's doing food, and who's, and so it's, how do I start just seeing it's not necessarily beneficial that we join each other's emotional roller coasters. And sometimes there's some of the most loving things my wife could say to me if I'm a little off balance is her to say, you need to enjoy that ride all on your own. I'm not getting on. Right. And just kind of let me have space to handle me, and then come back and say, this is what I was really needing, or this is what's really faced. And then I'm kind of back in the flow again.
Yeah. I love that. Sometimes we just need some space to think, or just kind of get over our emotions without bringing the other one
that's
on
the same
it with
with
us.
That's the same with kids too. So, like, sometimes you just need to be like, I need to be away from you.
Go to your room.
We have used many a time with our children of, you are not fun to be around right now, so I'm going over here away from you for a little bit. I'll come back later, but not now.
Right. So going back to what you were talking about with couples having issues, and it's good to make sure that you have, the overall, like, same goal in mind, right? Kind of like what you were talking about. What if couples have really big issues? Like, for instance, with us, like religion, that was a big turning point with us, because we both grew up very religious and in religious families, very Christian, and in our marriage, eventually, I just decided that wasn't really the path for me. And I still believed in a lot of the same things that Sarah did. But, one of our debates was organized religion, and that was actually one of our most popular debates, because we kind of disagree on that. And I feel like that's kind of a big problem, or maybe, like, maybe not problem. I don't know. Maybe you can think of a better word, but
disagreement,
conflict.
Conflict.
I mean, when you have almost different religious beliefs, and when that could possibly affect the way you raise your kids based on what you each believe. So for couples who have these big problems or conflicts,
either way,
what advice would you have for those types of conflicts?
Well, that's where, depending on the severity and how much overlap there is on the disagreements, you start to recognize sometimes there's definite benefit for professional help, to have someone help you unpack it. Because even let's take, you're talking about the idea of organized religion. That's a different subsect of the whole topic of religion,
right?
Which is still another different subsect of Christianity, which is a different subsect of spirituality. I mean, so you can get all these different layers, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, wait, we agree on spirituality. We agree on this aspect of it too. We don't agree on this. And now I've just totally reframed it. And sometimes there's a tremendous benefit of having somebody that's good, that can walk alongside you to help unpack it and realize you guys still do agree on a lot of these things. It's just how it plays out. Okay, so then now let's follow that out of, what does that mean? Like your example of, well, how are we going to raise our kids if we see organized religion differently? Well, then there's a lot of different scenarios that could come up with that might make it manageable, or it might be all right, we got to have some serious conversations about, what do we do, and do we keep going? And because I'm the type of therapist that even in the Christian world, there's a lot of us that won't even talk about the possibility of splitting up.
Right.
I'll go there with couples in the sense of we got to at least face it and be honest about what's going on in life, because it is an option. Is it an optimal option? Not usually, because there's fallout to it, but there's also fallout to staying in some place where you're both miserable.
Right.
So it's seeing it as, all right, how do we just be honest about life on life terms, and you layer over into the meanings and the values and the desires you have, and you see what's realistic. Because if you look at the context of a marriage and relationship and even life, we don't always get the choices we want. Sometimes it's what's my best bad choice, I guess you could say, if you put them on a continuum of, all right, this isn't optimally what I want, but this is the best I've got for where I am right now. I can have some integrity and character development by making that choice and just being real about it. And then lo and behold, I mean, it sounds a little bit like you guys' story of over the last couple of years of realizing, this is really bad, there's something wrong. And then all of a sudden realizing, wait, I'm a much better person now that I'm sticking it out, looking at things different, challenging myself, trying to be better myself. It's not just my partner's job to fix me.
Right.
And
yeah.
lo and behold, you've grown a better relationship with yourself and then each other, which I think that's where life gets really good. Because then you start seeing there's a whole lot more going on if I would just get out of my own way a lot of times.
Yeah.
And how I cause a lot of my own demise.
Well, yeah, I think that was a big turning point for us, is when we thought, or mainly me, honestly, I was just like, we're too different, you know. I believe this, you believe this. And then it was finally when we realized, it was just like you said, we're like, actually we do still believe in a lot of the same things. And I think that people, even if you take an extreme example, like an atheist, you know, it's like, if you go atheist, I still think even in those circumstances, you know, you can still find similarities, even though that might sound, you know. And I think that was the huge turning point for me specifically, was seeing all the you know, the good differences and how that made us stronger together. And
well, for me, it was finally learning how to accept that was how he wanted to live and who he wanted to be. And once I like finally just accepted him as like this path he was going on, and being able to love him for who he was becoming, like that is what finally like helped me for my turning point.
Yeah, it was also a compromise, because, you know, it instead of just being extreme, like I'm completely done, it would be like, okay, well, I'll go to church with you for an hour, you know, or finding those compromises and being like, okay, well then I'm okay if you want to go to the gym on Sundays, you know, or you know, making little compromises there, you know, really helped us out a lot. Where it's like, I'll do something that, you know, I respect this about you, and since I do, I might not agree with all of it, but I'm going to do it anyways, and that helped us out a lot. So
good.
So going along with conflict, in your book, you said to bring the authentic you into conflict. And I just wanted to see if you could like explain further like what that means and what that looks like in a marriage or a relationship, and maybe what it looks like in your marriage.
Well, let's just start there on how this is played out in our marriage. That's what comes to my mind the most. Is I bought into the idea early on that happy wife equals happy life, which isn't an authentic me. It's how do I try to keep this woman beside me in the best spirits possible, which isn't ultimately my job, right? That's not my responsibility. But
that's important.
But I always thought that just on being the higher desire, because I think of things in terms of higher desire, lower desire on every topic in marriage. And when it comes to sex, I'm the higher desire. And so I always thought a pissed off wife meant no possibility of sex. So therefore, how do I maintain the possibility of availability for her by keeping her always in good spirits, which means I become a chameleon and a yes man, and
which is not enticing to want to go to bed with, right?
No, It's not. But it's not talked about enough. That's what you think. It's like,
Right.
oh, hold on.
It seems to make sense when you say it,
Totally.
out loud.
Yeah.
Why would you turn it down when I've been buttering you up all day?
I did the dishes. Right? I folded the laundry.
Right. But it's recognizing, okay, having to come to grips with seeing, okay, the reality is I am being a covert manipulative person when I'm doing that. That I'm not handling, what do I really think? And this is where a lot of couples do this. And you guys probably have had this experience if you're not still having this experience of you plan a date night, or you get a chance to be out together whenever we get out together again in public with people again.
Right.
But, and you get in the car and you're getting ready to go. And as the husband, you look over to your wife and you go, where do you want to go? Right. Or she asks you, where do you want to go? And you're like, I don't care, wherever you want to go. And you get stuck in this whole stalemate of no one is willing to make a decision. Right.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff kills desire.
That's
and
true.
so it's recognizing me having a plan, being honest, being upfront. And there are times where I don't care where I want to go with her. I just want to be with her. But being able to say it that way is different than saying, you know what, you pick where we go. I'm just excited to be with you. That's a different statement of authenticity and vulnerability than, you know what if we went and did that? Where we're kind of hem-hawing and tiptoeing around. And and if you look at it, the other side of this whole thing, the sophistication of married life is there. You already read each other really well. And so you already know if you care about what we're doing or not. You already know history on each other. If we go eat Chinese food again and she knows I don't like it, she knows that's saying something, that I'm interested in her, because let's go do it, even though I'm not really into, it's just everything we do communicates. So how do I see it as, I just need to be cleaner about what am I communicating? What's being real? What do I really think about stuff? Because that getting out in the open adds a tremendous fuel to passion and energy and love in a marriage, because she doesn't have to guess of what's going on with me. And hopefully I don't have to guess about what's going on with her. Like when she's talking about the meanings earlier, I don't have to try to figure out because she'll come forward and say, this is what this means. And that just cuts through the chase. And we're dealing with the elephant in the room because it's just there. And so let's deal with it. And we can shrink it. We maybe can't get it to leave, but we can shrink the size of that thing and then be connecting better.
That's great.
Yeah. That kind of just reminded me of, I feel like that can also relate to when, like with Sarah has a hard time with, getting into conflict.
Yeah, I hate conflict.
It was just kind of how she was raised,
Yeah.
And in my family, we like kind of conflict and debating, so
All right.
so sometimes Sarah will hold in lots of things. It's, I can tell something's wrong. And I'm like, what's up? Like, what's wrong? Oh, nothing's wrong. Because she doesn't want to get in conflict or anything. And I feel like that can also be, I don't know, similar to going out to eat. Because it's like, oh, I don't care. I don't care where we go because I just want to do whatever you want to do. And I just like what you said a lot about, I don't care where we go. I just want to be with you, and that's what's important. And I like that a lot.
And what's so funny about that though is when you come to Sarah with the, hey, what's wrong? And Sarah, you're like, nothing. If you look at it objectively speaking, right there in that moment, you guys are both already in conflict.
I know.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. And so it's already happening. And so sometimes the better move for either one of you, Sarah, muster up the courage to, okay, here you go. Sit down. It's going to be a while. I got a list, right? Whatever it might be, however you want to deal with it.
Got your helmet on?
Start being real. But the other side of it can also be say, okay, I'm reading that something's wrong. And I know if you may not want to tell me, I get that. But don't come at me with, I don't care.
That's
later,
good.
Right? Because that's typically what we'll do of like, when they finally do unload, because we both do this. This is not a female only thing. I'm the one that's probably in our marriage, the harder one to get that kind of crap out of. Something's bothering me. and she's the one that's more, come on, bring it. I'll take it. Right. And
I have strong shoulders.
yeah, sometimes. And but it's seeing it as, okay, so don't hold me hostage for the fact that you would not tell me what's going on. And there's a difference of just, let's be more overt about it, because that's where we're neither tipping around each other. You know, we don't tiptoe around the stuff. We can, that's how you get rid of eggshell carpeting in your house, is you start just being honest about, okay, I realize our pattern is the blow up will be coming and I'm going to get blamed for not caring. And I'm going to disarm that a little bit because I'm coming after you because I do care.
Right.
And I do want to know. And that's just, I think that's the art of adulting better in life. And then in marriage too, because you start to recognize, I got to be better at conflict, because the world is conflict. I mean, if you have a biblical worldview, God put the things in order and gave free will. Hello, conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
So true.
Because of choice, there's conflict. Because if there's not choice, there cannot be love. And we all want to be chosen, which means I got to be willing to take the risk, and that's going to be conflict.
Right. So you said in your relationship, Pam is the one that's like, you know, ready to go and and everything.
She can be the more cut to the chase woman. Yes.
Right. So with us, it is like that. But like, so how? Because with Sarah, in her defense, when we were first married, the reason why she didn't bring up things is because I would get, you know, so angry sometimes so quickly. And so, you know, that kind of set forth the path, which I think I've improved on
Oh, yeah.
a lot.
Tremendously.
But you know, I feel like that's sometimes something people need to realize on that other side of the fence is, you know, why isn't this person bringing this up? And maybe that's not always the reason, because, you know, maybe
But it's a factor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you know, if you relate to that at all, Pam, but you know,
Totally. Yeah. Corey wouldn't bring up stuff with me early on. He would be the nice guy because I would explode. I mean, I broke a kitchen cabinet.
Oh my God.
Like the first year of marriage, I kicked and broke the kitchen cabinet, right? So he learned.
She was just trying to get something to drink, but it came off a little strong on the opening of the door.
Right. But it made him scared of me, right?
Yeah.
How was I going to react? And it was a long time before I realized he's scared of me. And anyway, so yeah, how we react to one another.
Yeah, everything we do is teaching people how to treat us.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you start to recognize that I co-create what goes on, right? Josh, you're talking about the idea of she holds stuff in. I wonder why. Right?
Yeah.
Just being curious about that. Just because what we choose to do when we look at our partners, a great litmus test to ask yourself that I've just kind of come across in the last 2 years is their reactions or responses to me and their interacting with me in life is either good judgment or bad judgment on their part.
Right.
And sometimes it's both.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to ask myself, okay, if it's good judgment on their part to withhold telling me what's really going on, that's about me.
Right.
That is not about them.
Yeah. And that's what I had to realize.
They are co-conspirators in this too. Yes. But it's mainly about me. And so how do I use this with a lot of the couples I talk with on if you're the higher desire for sex and it's not happening enough in your marriage, what's the lower desires statement? Is it good judgment? You know, is the sex that you're wanting to have with them really worth having? Because it could be they have a better viewpoint of we're having lousy sex. And so my question really is, why would the higher desire want multiple helpings of really lousy sex?
Yeah.
That's a better way to look at this, to see it as, hold on, what is this really about and what's going on? And my whole goal as a spouse and as a person is I want people's responses to me to be bad judgment. if they don't want to hang out and connect and do more, I want it to be like they're missing out on an opportunity. You know, because I can handle me and I'm inviting and they would want to. And so it's just kind of changing the power dynamic to see it as, how am I being a better agent in my own life that's inviting what I'm looking for and willing to say what's in the way still.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, sorry.
Do something to say.
No.
I just had a thought. So you guys, just based on what you said, so you guys mentioned that you're Christian, and we're also Christian, and I know a lot of people aren't, but I feel like in the Christian world also, it's very, it's usually a pretty strong belief to wait to have sex until you get married. So that just reminded me when you were talking about sex. And in our culture, it's a big thing, to wait for that. And I feel like sometimes I don't, do you feel like doing that sort of, I don't know what you guys' beliefs are, but do you feel like doing that sort of thing can make people kind of uncomfortable to, once you eventually have sex, to kind of talk about it and be more open about it with each other? Do you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason Sexy Marriage Radio exists, is to fill the void that's been created by churches and religious institutions doing so poorly on talking about this and preparing people for it. Because even most churches, our experience has been, most churches don't talk about it.
No.
And that silence speaks negative most of the
Right.
time. Right. It's something bad. It's something, that's the whole sex is dirty, sex is bad, say it to someone you love. Right.
Exactly.
It's like, that's an interesting framework. But so it's seeing it as, how do we recognize that? I think of sex as a language professionally, and that's what we talk about on our show too, that it's interchangeable. How we do life is how we do sex, and how we do sex is how we'll do life. We are the same people in both. So it's just much more of a pressure cooker when we get into the intimacy that's associated with sex a lot of times. And there's a deeper sophistication going on in our sex lives and in our sexuality, and what we do with it, what we don't do with it. So we are big proponents we want people to frame conversations about this, whether it's about their marriage or their sex life, that's interchangeable to me. Sarah, putting you on the spot, and you do not have to answer this at all, but just as an example, if you are conflict averse, then that means you're not going to be willing to probably be real free in sex as it unfolds on what could be, not on what you do or don't do. That's just technique. I'm talking about how present you are on if something's going on and it's like, I'm really not thinking about that. I was thinking about this, and, hoping he doesn't notice, all of that's a language. But bringing it forward and saying, dude, you're sucking at this right now. You got to do it this way. That's a whole different ballgame for your sex life.
Yeah,
and your life. Because he's probably going to be likely, if he's like a normal husband, going to be like, thank you. I've been wanting to figure out this map for so long. And
well, sorry. I was, well, with us. So, and where we grew up in Utah, very religious, very Christian. Sarah and I, I guess we were a little naughty and stuff before, we got married. But in a way, I almost feel like that sometimes made it, because sex has honestly never, not to get too personal or whatever, but it's never really been an issue. We've always been very communicative with sex and what we like, what we don't like, like what things we want to try. Like that's always been really good for us. But other couples that I know in our community that kind of did wait for that, they seem to sometimes struggle with bringing things up and
with each other. Yeah, they feel awkward about talking about it with each other.
Yeah, or I don't know how many people have come up to especially Sarah, out of friends and stuff like that have been like, my husband, he does this, I just don't like it, and like we only have sex with the lights off, and it's like, what is going on? Like, what?
Tell him.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, yeah,
I know,
it's like you
gotta talk. Like, why are you telling me this? And so I wonder if that has any connection, because I do think there can be benefit in waiting till marriage, and I think that having that sexual relation with someone you love and you're passionate about, and you have that emotional connection, is just so big, other than just sleeping around and being lustful about things. There's such a big difference. And so just wondering your thoughts on that. But
yeah, it's much bigger than just an act. It's an
Mhm.
experiencing the essence of each other. And that can be a lifelong thing, but that also is something that's such a sacred gift to give an experience with someone else, that the exclusivity of it is what makes it so powerful to me.
Right.
Right.
There's an element of just understanding that there is something deeper going on that we're experiencing, and research continues to show out that um, the longer you're in a relationship, the better the likelihood sex will be,
Oh,
because you
that's
start to
interesting.
become just better and more comfortable with yourself
Hmm.
and
That's interesting.
sharing yourself. And getting more comfortable in my own skin helps free up what I can do or don't do and what I experience with another person more than anything else.
Right. So, we have some people that we know who are into like an open relationship or open marriage. So what do you think that is beneficial or healthy at all to like have like an open relationship or marriage?
I
Wow.
I feel like that is something that is becoming, and just to be
Right.
clear, we do believe that, it's just us, and but
Right.
I feel like in today's world, especially where we live, it seems like it's becoming this. I mean, I was at the gym and someone walked up to me and they said, "Hey, are you a swinger?" And
Yeah,
I'm
just
like,
flat out
"What?"
didn't even
I didn't
know
even
him.
know them. And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "But you're married." And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, it was the strangest. I feel like it's becoming this really common. I
Yeah.
don't know about you guys in Texas, but it seems like it's becoming almost like the cool thing to do, or
Well, I mean, for years, there's been the argument of we are not, as human beings, meant to be monogamous. That
right,
goes against our
right,
design, right?
uh-huh,
So I don't want to get into that whole thing, because Sarah, what you're asking, we try to constantly with our show, and then for sure as a professional, I don't put and instill my values on other people.
Right.
right,
That
yeah,
what
for
works for
sure,
us is what works for us. It's our choice.
for
Um,
sure.
I think,
I do.
yeah, she does, true, but
I
that's
don't.
the difference in just our professional stances. If more than anything,
Right,
it comes down to a value structure. I've had some couples that have come in that have been in open relationships,
mm-hmm,
and as we dig into it deeper, I've yet to ever find a couple that where both are completely on board with it.
Yeah.
right,
One person leading the charge and the other harboring more and more layers of resentment, that ultimately those things have ended in pretty big disasters. It went on for a while maybe, but it didn't end up that way. And that's where each individual person comes down to their own character and their own values of what do I really want and what do I really believe. Are there couples that could see it and have it be a vibrant aspect of their life and they live a great marriage and it's open? Why not? I don't see why they couldn't.
Oh,
I don't agree with it.
he and I disagree on
Right.
this,
I
right?
don't I
I
don't
just don't
agree with
see
it
how
personally
that
speaking,
works.
but professionally speaking,
right. No, I see what you mean.
yeah, it could happen because people are people and whatever. I just think there's still something about the sacredness and the bond and the exclusivity that comes from marriage and that monogamous relationship that only she and I know. There's something so much more profound
Yeah,
with that's the couple that at the end of their life, they're looking at each other, and ultimately this is kind of our journey and our goal. um, at some point in our life, one of us won't be around.
Mm-hmm.
It's just by choice or by tragedy, it's going to happen,
right,
right? So how do we both continually be able to look each other in the eye and have the courage to say to each other, it's okay, you can go first, I'll deal with the pain of losing you,
mm-hmm,
right? That's a loving, sacrificial, I'm in to the end
right,
moment.
Right.
That's what I want in marriage, because that's the whole, we can then look at each other and I don't even have to know what she's thinking. I just know what she's thinking.
uh-huh,
I just know what her experience is, because we've got that whole life with each other and that whole aspect of language we've created together. How else do you get that?
Yeah. I just don't see how you get to that level if you're introducing someone else into your relationship. I mean, there's a moral aspect that for me that swinging's just wrong. I believe it doesn't fit in line with my moral code or what I would
right
train my kids on. But just in a relationship aspect of I don't see how that ever ends up well. Or why that choice would be perceived as being a good one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree.
Me too.
But yeah, we were, it's also, so I always try to, because since I decided, where I stand kind of with God, I've had lots of family members say, he must not be happy because, he's doing this and this and he's not doing this now. And so I always try to see everyone else like that as well, so it's like I don't agree with that, but, maybe that makes them happy. I don't know. So, kind of.
And ultimately we can't make that decision for everybody
else,
can we?
Yeah.
Right. So we can share the joy that we have, hopefully in the life that we have. And if that's helpful to someone else, great. If they're not receptive to that, that's up to them.
Yeah. And that's what Jesus did while he was on earth too. That, hey, I'm offering something, and if you don't want it, okay, that's your choice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But he would walk away, and not every need is met if they're not seeking it too. So,
that's true.
Yeah, that's well said.
So, moving on from that, there's a part in your book that I really liked, that you mentioned like 3 different types of boundaries that you should have in your relationship. And the 2 that I kind of wanted to focus on were like personal and relationship boundaries. So what are some personal and relationship boundaries you and Pam have set for yourselves that have been beneficial in your marriage?
Okay. I want to add a caveat though, just for your listeners, because you got to talk about the internal, which is the third layer. So you got the internal, the personal, and then the relational.
Right.
And I got to give credit to Dr. Robert Glover for framing it the way he took Townsend and Cloud's boundaries work and framed it into that. And that's such a clean, easy way to deal with it, because personal boundaries are the ones that were the most common, right? That how close do you let someone be? What can they do while they're there? This personal space, if you will. But the interesting thing I've discovered in my own life, in our life, and then in clients' lives is if my internal boundaries are horrible, of course my relational and personal boundaries are horrible too. If I can't be consistent with myself, I'm not going to be consistent with other people, right?
Right.
But so for personal boundaries, a lot of it, I boil it down to teaching people how to treat me.
Yeah.
That if I don't do something when I feel like I'm being disrespected or treated poorly or neglected and ignored, if I don't do anything about that, I'm teaching that that's okay. And that's a personal boundary then that I need to address and just say, you know what, hold on. What about us? What about me? Where do I fit in this whole thing? And just kind of interjecting myself into life better. And then the relational boundaries, I mean, from the last little bit we talked about, we have the relational boundaries of this is exclusive between us. There's aspects of our marriage that no one else knows about. For sure, our sex is just between us.
Right.
I see a big, huge problem of spouses, their sexual energies leaking everywhere else but their marriage. It's not directed there. So
and that doesn't necessarily mean they're even having intercourse with
someone
else. It's just...
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of what you meant by that.
Yeah, that's the glances, the staring, the pornography, the movies, all of that. That's sexual energy going somewhere.
Maybe how she dresses because she wants to get noticed elsewhere rather than focus that energy on, I want him to notice. I want my husband to notice me.
Yeah, that's a relational one.
A lady on the street and a freak in the bed, right?
That's the goal. Yep. But
boundaries.
But it's just seeing it as, the relational ones that she and I agree on, in the sense that we're both proactive on, I'm not going to be in a one-on-one situation with another woman I do it professionally in the sense of counseling, but there's also, she knows full well, I have topics I will not discuss with a woman in her life. If she wants to talk about her sex life, her husband comes into the session, or I have a female colleague that can come in and sit in, and we'll talk about it then. I'm not going to be in a position that could ever be construed differently.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I also, with our daughter, I mean, a 14-year-old daughter, like taking a friend home. I'm not taking one of her friends home where it's just she and her and me. She will, you know, those are relational kind of boundaries of, we're going to honor ourselves.
Yeah.
And where we live, and that's just being proactive.
Yeah.
In what life is.
Yeah. And I oh, sorry, go ahead, Pam.
I was going to say, outside of those type of scenarios, I can tend to be a workaholic. And so Corey will speak up of, hey, I need you home, or I need you present. I need you focused. And it's kind of that boundary of, you got to shut off work. If maybe I'm totally oblivious at that, you know, point in a crazy tax season or whatever the case may be. So it's also how focused am I on my family or my spouse, if I'm consumed by something else, a project or whatever the case may be.
Right. And I just think what you were talking about, how, you guys already have these boundaries set out in your head before they even happen. And I feel like that's an issue I myself had, and something Sarah and I have talked about, where it's, it's like knowing where the boundaries are and where the lines are before you get to that point. Like what's appropriate to talk about with a coworker, or what's, I'm a very avid gym goer. Is it, what am I going to do if a girl comes up to me and asks, can I work in with you or something? You know what I mean? Like having those scenarios in your head. And that's something we both talked about. And that's something mainly I struggled with, just obliviously. Because I don't think a lot of people, even like you said, like, if we have a babysitter over, or, with your daughter's friend, who's going to drive her home? I just think a lot of people don't even realize that. It's like, oh yeah, I'll drive her home. It's not, in the moment, it's totally done in innocence.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. And I just think that's how a lot of affairs start. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like a lot of people go outwardly searching for affairs, or maybe I'm wrong.
No.
I think you're right.
It's a gradual thing. I mean, put it all under the whole aspects of sin. All of it is a gradual thing. I mean, it'd be so much easier if if the temptations that were out there actually were labeled as such.
Right.
A big glowing sign that says danger, sin, danger, sin.
Do not drive her home.
Right.
Temptation approaching.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'd be so much easier, but that's not the way it is. It's this whole, I can handle that. We kind of dabble and just kind of hang around, and lo and behold, I've already crossed the line, even though it's not a huge one, but it's a little, and nothing major happened. I wasn't struck dead. Oh, okay, I'll dabble a little long. It's all gradual things.
Right. Yeah. I thought that was something good to bring up that, has been huge for us, talking about.
Well, and making sure you're communicating those boundaries, because I feel like I just kind of figured that he had the same boundaries that I did, and that we were both on the same page, and then come to find out we had to like talk about, like, this is what I feel like you should do in this situation, and how this situation should be handled if it ever comes up or whatever. And
I realized for the first time that Sarah, before, and we never talked about it, she already had all these boundaries set up. We were talking about your work, like she's a teacher. There's guys that work there,
mainly women, but obviously
mostly women, but she already had in her head, like, I'm not going to put myself in a situation, even though you're always like, I'd never do that or anything. It's just having those in place and I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
And I just think a lot of couples don't think of that, and it can lead, to trouble out of complete innocence. So
totally.
Yeah. I feel like we've covered, we did have a list of questions that, we wanted to ask, but I feel like is there any specific ones you wanted to?
No, I think we kind of
covered all
everything that we wanted to talk to you guys about.
But we did want to pick one of the questions. We had our followers kind of ask questions. We were saying that we were going to interview you guys, And I picked out one that I kind of liked a lot. And
Okay.
so one of our followers asked, can it be healthy or even recommended for couples to keep secrets from each other? Can that ever be healthy at all?
So this is where content is king on what is the secret that you're talking about, because this is where the meaning matters. Because you personally and professionally, I believe there are secrets that we have in marriage. There's things that I have going on in my life that she doesn't know about. She doesn't care about them because most of them don't impact her directly. Right? It's my weird little world. But if she asks, hey, what are you thinking about? Do I withhold that or not? That's where I start getting into this, like we just talked about. I start heading down the slippery slope possibly, because secrets ultimately can be incredibly destructive in life.
Right. For sure.
Because the other side of this coin is you cannot keep secrets in marriage. If there's something going on that impacts a partner, it's known. And you guys have kids. If your 4-year-old comes walking out and they've had a bad day and they're trying to put on the good face of like, I'm not, and you're like, how'd it go? And they're like, oh, good. And you can read what they just said is not at all what just happened.
Yeah.
Them, right? That's the same thing that goes on in marriage. We just play dumb in marriage a lot more. I don't want to ask that question. I don't know if I want to know the answer to it, because it's going to be bad and really wreak havoc on my world. And I sometimes don't want to go down that path. Right. And so I just play dumb. So can you have secrets? Yes. It really depends on what it's about though, because ultimately it will wreak havoc because it's going to come out.
Well, let's just say, for instance, like someone's at work or the gym or something, and someone of the opposite sex approaches them and starts hitting on them or something. You reject them, whatever. You go back home. Is that something you should outwardly, be like, hey, this happened at the, wherever I was? Is that a situation, or is it like, do you know what I mean? Is it better just
to me, that's all contingent on the status of the people, the two people involved, on how they are with their character and development and integrity. And then also the status of the marriage, because sometimes that can be great fuel for a marriage of like,
hey baby, I got hit on today.
I am in demand. You better want to be around this, right?
Girls are handing me their numbers left and right.
Right. So that can be something that can be harnessed for something good, but it also can be something like, hey, I just want to be forthcoming to let you know this is what happened. And it and if I can make it to where it's not a manipulative, hey, you better X, because now I'm outside of my reign or my lane and what I can control. Instead, it's wow, this just happened to me. It kind of took me off guard. I wasn't thinking, and I'm just kind of revealing, I'm being vulnerable with who I am, or I really kind of liked that. I need to be very careful about, and I'm just living my existence to be better. That brings us closer. Plus, it puts pressure on the marriage that's already there, because we both believe if you're living your best life, that is attractive to other people. And it's not always sexually attractive to other people. It's just attractive. They want to be around that. And so that puts you up into an element of being noticed. It's just, what do I do with that? Where do I steer it? That's the better choice of love and enduring aspects of marriage to me. Is I use it for good though. I steer it towards my marriage.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the progression of 26 years for Corey and I. And early on, I was a jealous wife.
Oh.
So if I knew he was getting hit on, I'd be like, well, you need to cancel that gym membership because you don't need to be around. It would have been, I don't know that I'd have gone that extreme, but you get it. It would have been.
Yeah.
It was a real threat.
It was a threat. And
for sure.
Not now. Now to be like, good job.
He should be checking you out.
Because I know he has those boundaries.
Yeah.
And I have boundaries. Early on, we didn't know that. I didn't know that about him. And I don't know that he had boundaries. And I know I didn't have good boundaries early on. So I think some of this we've got it, just like Corey was saying, we just have to look at where we are If I've got something like that going on, I for sure need to be taking care of myself and making sure I'm not creating a situation where that keeps coming on. I need to have a good feel of how my husband's going to react before I go home and tell him. And what's my purpose in telling him that? Yeah. Am I trying to draw something out of him?
Right. Right. Because I know people can use that as fuel to they like to make their spouse jealous. I've had friends that have literally said that to me. They're like, I enjoy going home and telling my wife, this girl hit on me to make her. I'm like, what good is that doing, man? Like, what are you doing?
Exactly. Well, we don't keep secrets from each other.
Yeah.
So I better tell her. I don't know, stuff like that. If you're taking care of you, why do you need to share that other than to maybe make some fun banter between the two of you? But
right. Well, I think showing the signs of being like, good for you, like shows confidence in yourself, and then also confidence in your spouse.
Yeah.
And I think those are good aspects.
Your spouse, it's showing your spouse you're respecting him. You know, if you come home to Sarah and say, guess what happened, she's going to feel more comfortable that you're shooting straight with her too.
Yeah.
And that just creates a little more intimacy between the two of you, a little more connection, because she's going to feel like, yeah, okay, he's watching out for the two of us. He's watching out for our relationship.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And this is all also wrapped up in the whole auspices of our own integrity of who we are as people. Because if I'm living that, I'm willing to share it, but I also will act on it, because that's where I can add that component. Like you're talking about the friend that it has a cruel streak to him of, I'll just go home and kind of be cruel to my spouse. The more she can stand on her own 2 feet, she could be able to confront that cleaner of just like, seriously? Okay. Or you can turn it into the banter and add, well, yeah, they should, but you also need to recognize you do anything stupid with them as an action, you lose me. That's a different context of I will still handle me, of like, hey, you know what you stand to lose, however far you want to go down that road. And it's just, that's the freedom of I'm given choice, because I want to be chosen in my marriage regularly, not force the choice on my spouse of me.
Right. Do you think if you were to say it in that way that people might think you're giving me an ultimatum type thing? Like, it's either you keep doing this or you lose me. Like, do you think people might see that as an ultimatum?
I don't know if a marriage exists where there's not ultimatums. We just don't think of them as ultimatums.
Yeah, that's true.
It's living according to a boundary is an ultimatum.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, but the difference is looking at it as most of us think of an ultimatum as I'm holding my spouse hostage. They have to do X, Y, or Z, rather than an ultimatum is only for myself. Of will I act upon what I say if they do what I don't want them to do? That's the ultimatum of will I follow through? Because if I don't, I'm teaching them, you can treat me however you want.
That's true. Yep.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I mean, we asked all the questions we wanted to ask, and we even asked a bunch more that came up throughout the conversation. I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to add or at all.
No, it's been fun.
Yeah, this has been an awesome conversation.
Do you guys want to just share again, like the name of your book, your podcast, your website, just so people can?
Yeah, so you can find me. So the name of the book I've got, that's the most prominent one, is Naked Marriage. And you can find all of the stuff we do at our online home, which is smrnation.com, which Sexy Marriage Radio Nation. So if you just boil that down to smrnation.com, that's where our podcast is. That comes out every Wednesday morning. Is a new episode. We've been on the air for over 8.5 years. So this week's episode, as we're recording, is episode 463.
Wow.
We talk about anything and everything that will help couples be better and experience more in their marriage and their sex life.
Is it just you two, or do you interview people, or?
So I will have guests on occasionally, where
actually pretty regularly.
Yeah. So a couple times a month is probably a guest that I'll have a colleague that will jump on board with me, and we'll answer questions or talk about topics that they're more versed in than I am.
Okay.
And then some shows, it's just Pam and I, where we answer questions of the SMR Nation. That
Oh, cool.
They will ask, they'll voicemail in or email, and we try to set it up to where if you got a question and you're not sure where you can ask it, we'll answer it. So ask it. And a lot of people have some serious questions when it comes to sex and sexuality, and we want to help them get good information.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Thanks so much for coming on with us, you guys.
Yeah, thank you
It's
so
been
much.
great.
We had a really good time. You guys are awesome people, and we really appreciate it. So we had a good time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Okay, enjoy the rest of the quarantine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, take care, guys. Thanks again.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.